Hey guys, it's Charles Austin here with Liquid Blue Cabarete in Cabarete, Dominican Republic. And this time we're not on the beach, we're just across the street. We're here in the garage. And I wanted to make this video a little bit for people here locally that have been sort of inquiring, how do I set up my foil board? And I'm gonna be setting up my own foil board right now, and also giving you a little bit of thoughts in regards to if you had different versions of equipment on what you need to consider. But basically in real time right now, my board is normally set up. It's not set up. There's some other boards set up behind me, but I'm not gonna be riding on this. So when we're gonna get into wing foiling and we're gonna go wing foiling, well, we're gonna need a couple things, right? So we're gonna need a wing. Right now, it's around 15 to 20 knots. So I'm gonna take out my wing. That's easy, that's set up. I'm gonna need a pump to pump up my wing. Here I got a pump. I got this little cool adapter from a friend named Paul that he sort of messes around with, what are those printers called? Those sort of 3D printers. And he made me a little holder for the rope of the pump, for the hose. So that's pretty cool. I might talk about that later. And then I'm gonna need a helmet. My helmet's all the way back here. Got my helmet. And I'm gonna need an impact vest. So I just like to get everything sort of that I need to get set up. Let's see, an impact vest. I'm size medium. There we go. Got myself an impact vest. So when I'm getting myself ready to go out for a session, I like to sort of just lay everything out. If you have the space, it's nice. If you don't have the space, you just sort of do it in the space you have. But I like to lay everything out just to make sure that I got everything I need. Now, of course, I'm gonna need my board. I'm gonna need a foil. So as always, I'm riding this board, which is the 44-liter Rocket wing board. It already has the straps on. I'm not gonna make a video. I'm not gonna add in putting on the straps. Putting on the straps is pretty clear. Some boards don't have strap inserts and some do. This one has the inserts, so I'm using the V or Y straps, depending on who you ask, they call it differently, and then just one single strap in the back. And I like to set up my straps pretty loose, just so I could slide in easily and I could also slide out easily. I find it's a bit more of a safety feature, and some people say tighter the better, but I just feel a bit more comfortable with some space in it. And then I got to set up the board. So I don't always mess around with my gears. Sometimes I have some help to mess around with the equipment, and I can tell that I don't have the track system in the screws for the tracks. So I'm doing all this in real time, didn't really prepare for it. And I'm just gonna get everything ready so that you have an idea of if you're ever gonna set up a board, what you're gonna have to do, what you're gonna have to look out for. And it actually looks like in here, so we got 1, 2, 3, 4. And I always talk about having extra screws. So there's a bag with some screws in it. Got way more screws than I need. So I got my screws, great. I'm gonna need a key. All the screws that we have are M6 torque screws. So I got my tool, I got my sliders. So I'm just gonna put those down. And then I also am gonna have to decide on which foil I'm gonna put on the board. And we're gonna talk a little bit about, let me just take this out. We're gonna talk a little bit about that because there are some differences with some equipment, especially when you're messing around with aluminium versus carbon. And this is something that I saw, and that's what sort of sparked the interest in this video, because I had someone that was new to the sport setting up a board, and they're trying to figure out how does something connect, and they didn't realize that when you use an aluminium mast versus a carbon mast, it's a little bit different. So in any case, here I got, this is a 1480. Nope. Here we go. There's my skate. So I got my skate. Got my carbon mast. Gonna make my way out of here. A lot of gear. Whoopa. A lot of gear. So I got that. Yep, this looks correct. Let me just make sure. Sometimes we also put covers on the wrong ones, but it's light and small. Actually, it's the wrong foil. So you see, that's why it's good to have everything organized in your garages. So this is the wrong foil. So, this is the one. Nope. Well guys, we're seeing something in real time here, which is trying to find my foil. Here it is. Alrighty, all the way in the back. So here's my SK8. Sort of funny to do this in real time and see that things don't really work out. I got my SK8 ready to go. And then as you can tell on the mast, I always leave my screws in just so I don't lose them. And here you're gonna see that these are 32mm screws. It's gonna vary from brand to brand, essentially. But all right, I got my screws, my 32mm screws. So I pretty much got everything I need. So what I'm just gonna show you real quick in regards to the carbon to carbon and the aluminum to carbon, as you can tell with F1, this is F1 in specific, so they have a specific adaptation to the mast. And the carbon foils are one piece in total, compared to the aluminum, which are 3 pieces in total. And the nice thing is that back in the day, people were complaining that equipment wasn't really interchangeable, and that was a big complaint of people, that they're spending a lot of money on different gear, and then you realize that the next year you can't use it with the other equipment, and you can't forward integrate or backwards integrate. And essentially people were pissed off with good reason, because you're sort of wasting money. But what's nice here is that you can slowly sort of pick and choose what equipment you want to focus on. I always believe that having a carbon foil is very nice. They're super light, more rigid, especially if you have an HM, a high modulus carbon foil plane. It's gonna be nice and rigid, so that's gonna make it more responsive. It's gonna make it lighter. It's gonna take off a lot of weight, essentially, from your setup. In terms of what I believe you should have carbon, I think the mast and the foil are great. The board is not so necessary in reality for most people, so you're gonna save yourself there 30 to 50% on a board purchase, or even more. And in any case, so the main difference with the carbon is that the top plate, the mast, and this, which can be called an adapter, let's say, to the foils, is all integrated into one piece. And let me just see here if I have one piece that's individual. I do not. But basically, how these masts are connected is that it's in 3 different stages. And you can tell that this board here has a carbon mast, carbon foil on it, on an aluminum mast. So basically, when you have an aluminum mast, it's different pieces connected together. It lets you also do interchanging, which is nice. So if you ride in a spot where you need to have different heights of mast, instead of buying 3 different carbon ones, you could buy just the pieces you need in aluminum. So in any case, I might have to go a little bit more deeper on that. But for now, just to set up this board, I have essentially everything I'm gonna need to get this board going. So I got my screws, I'm gonna slide them in. This is a slider system. And what I'd like to do, since the carbon mass sort of attaches differently to the boards, is that unlike the aluminum version, which you can quickly interchange, the holes of the carbon are actually inside the top plate. So that means you have to line up your foil and then screw it in. So it's a little bit of a different process. That's why I don't really unrig my gear too often. But once you get in the hang of it, you essentially can set up your board in a matter of a couple minutes. Here I'm taking my time, not in any rush. So let me just get all this out. Perfect. And then I put in these little plugs, which make it so that these sliders, if I do unmount the foil, at least they don't slide out, and I lose my pieces while I'm traveling or whatever it might be. So here, I'm gonna get my mast on first. I like to align the holes. Get those screws in, sort of lined up, plus or minus, and then lightly screw them in. I can feel that they both grabbed. Perfect. And then what I do is that I slide with the slider. Since I have to aim for the holes, I put essentially each track slider all the way at the end, at the extreme, so it's very easy to line up and then readjust. Because once it's in the track, everything's easy, so you can sort of feel them out. Oop. No, so you see, there's not really grabbing, so let me just lift this. feel like one got in, maybe not this one, let's see. Oh, actually they were both in. All right, so once I feel that, what I do to check if the tracks got caught is that I just move it and I see that the tracks are completely out. So now I'm gonna set up to the number I want. On the bottom of the boards, you're usually gonna have your position. So for beginners, you might put a little bit more forward, and depending on the conditions, and that sometimes you might put it a little bit more backwards, but essentially more forward your foil is, more lift you're gonna have, more backwards it is, less lift. So depending on what you need help with, you can adjust accordingly. But in this case, I'm gonna put it at 3, which is sort of the number I've been going to for this foil. And actually, sorry, I've been doing it at 3.5 recently. I've been testing 3.5, so 3.5. And then I'm just gonna start tightening up the screws. So you wanna make sure that it stays nice and squared. And then you tighten up all the screws to a point where with just normal strength, you can't really tighten it further. And then after that, we're gonna start cinching it down a little bit more. All right, let me just get here to see that it's lined up nicely. Yeah, sometimes it could angle off a little bit, which is not a big deal, but. And then here, I'm gonna start tightening up. And since it's 4 different screws in 4 different areas, I like to tighten them up all little by little to sort of tighten it evenly. And it's always important to apply that downward pressure so you don't damage the screw heads, because then it's no fun. You do have to realize that some boards use short screws here and some use longer. So this one, in this case, uses longer screws. They're 25 millimeters long. And then there's some that uses just 12 and 10. But your board should come with the screws, and then it's always good to have an extra 1 or 2. So once this is nice and tight, which it feels pretty much so, and you want to have it nice and tight so it doesn't loosen up while you're riding. All right, we're gonna start putting on the mast. Yeah, this is pretty much good to go. Yep. Always line it up. Boom. And one more. Perfect. All right, so now we're gonna get the mast on. So the mast, sort of just get it on. I grab each screw. Whoop-a. I grab each screw, and then I just do it sort of by finger a little bit. First one, second one, third one. Alrighty. Once it's there, you want to make sure that it's all lined up nicely. Should go in pretty easily. And again, I don't tighten it too much, just so that they all evenly get screwed down and the foil's nicely in place, locked in, essentially. So there we go. There we get this. Perfect. So once it gets to that level, then I start doing again the tightening. Boom. Boom. And again here, you don't want to cinch it down to the point where you're going to break something, but you want to get it to a point where it's nice and tight so that it's not loose and vibrating on you, which I've seen many people happen. All right. And then again, this is a monoblock, so there is 2 screws here. And even though I know they're nice and tight, I'll just put a little bit of pressure. And again, a little bit of pressure. All right, so let me just flip this around. Super. So now essentially, we got the board set up, we got our wing, we got our pump, got my helmet, got my impact. I do need a Lycra, so I will put on a Lycra. Though, essentially, this is sort of how I go about setting up the gear, because, actually it's not my size. This is how I go about setting up the gear, just to make sure that I have everything before going out and checking it. Because a lot of the times people just keep using the gear, they don't check, they don't try to see what could be wrong, or did I set it up properly, or they don't even know how to set it up, and hopefully this video is gonna help you out. But basically, you wanna make sure that you set up your board and your gear properly, because then it's gonna make your sessions a lot better, and you're gonna feel confident too with your gear. The worst thing is I've had some people that their foils have fallen off their boards, people that their straps have come out of them, and all these things sort of can basically mess you up when you're out there. So it's important to make sure that you set up your gear properly and you take the time to check it so that you don't wreck it, essentially. And with that being said, this is setting up an F1 carbon setup, which is a little bit different than the aluminium, because the aluminium essentially, like I said, there's a difference here in the top plate on how it connects, which is not a big deal. And essentially what you learned here, you can apply it to the aluminium. But when you're thinking about pieces you might need or things like that, they do differ a little bit, where a aluminium mast will need what is called a Titan mast adapter, which essentially allows you to connect a carbon foil to an aluminium mast. But all those things are very easy to figure out, and if you do have any questions, anyone can sort of help you that is a dealer or that is knows about the sport, essentially. But what is important is that everything should fit in like Lego pieces, essentially, and it shouldn't be rocket science, because now the companies, most of them have made everything pretty seamless. Sometimes people do find it annoying that there's different screw lengths in different places. For example, here it's 32 millimeters. Here it might be, I actually believe it's, this one I'm not too sure about, if it's 25 or if it's less. And then in the board it's 25. And when you go to aluminium, it's a different number. So there are some small differences there, but once you get the hang of it, it's not a big deal, and it's relatively easy. So this video did go a little bit longer than what it would normally take me to set up my gear if I was just doing this by myself without trying to show it to people, but you get the idea. So in any case, we got our gear set up. Hopefully this helps you when you're trying to set up your gear. We didn't talk, like I said, about where to position your foil too much, because there's a lot to go behind that. And also we didn't talk about different brands because we're only using F1 here. So this is the only thing I could sort of refer to you. But most of the brands are somewhat similar in how you set up your foil and how you set up your gear. So without anything really much more being said, I hope that this video helped you, and we'll stay tuned for the next videos where I might be showing you the differences with setting up an aluminium foil, which was where I actually saw the mistake the first time. Someone was trying to connect a carbon foil plane to an aluminium mast, but they didn't know you needed an adapter, so they were very confused on how to get it going. And then I realized people might need help on actually how to set up the gear and make sure that everything's tight, organized, and proper. You know, if you see that your foil is pointed the other way, for example, like people who surf fins, people that set up their surf fins in reverse and things like that, you want to be able to make sure that you make sense of what it looks like it's supposed to look right. And in this case, it does look right. The foil is not completely reversed to the board direction, and we have everything else organized. So that's pretty much it, guys. In any case, if you have any other questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. Send us an email if you want, hello@lbcabarete.com. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This is Charles Austin with Liquid Blue Cabarete in Cabarete, Dominican Republic. And I hope you guys have a good day. I'm actually gonna go out for a session now, so we'll chat.